So, as Ken said, a fine American gentleman. I'm GB Heidarsson, CEO of eDataSource. And with me here is Chris Adams, who is our wonder kid and CTO, and makes everything happen without me understanding half of it. But we wanted today to talk to you a little bit about kind of our newest endeavor in deliverability, which is caused by some of the changes that have been happening in the privacy landscape and with some of the internet services or inbox services vendors. But before we go, I really wanted to give a quick hand to the MediaPost team, because as Ken said, I've been here for many years, and I think this is one of the best shows I've been at. So good job, guys. Very good job. Now, the deliverability landscape has changed a lot since I started here. Is there anybody here that's kind of 15 years plus in email? Okay, there's a few of us old-timers here. Back in the early 2000s, we didn't have to worry too much about things. It was mainly kind of our own moral compass that was the guiding light. And then in 2003, the first email is dead event happened. Scan spam came around, and it was so strict that we thought that email was just going to go away completely. I think there was an overreaction, like most of the reactions since, to any change in the landscape. The big changes that have been happening in the last few years is the use of engagement metrics and reputation in deliverability, kind of rendered seed-based monitoring completely, well, not completely useless, but didn't really help to gauge deliverability percentage after that started to happen. This is kind of when we started to come into the deliverability space, because we found that using consumer monitoring and monitoring consumer behavior in inbox was really the only true measure of deliverability once those changes took effect. Now, since then, we've been dealing with talks about privacy issues and things like that. We, of course, are very conscious about that, and all of the data that we use is aggregated. But things have been changing, and we've seen these changes both through GDPR, through the new Indian legislation, through the upcoming legislation here in the US, but also that vendors like Gmail are now kind of getting into that game. On October 8th, Gmail announced that as of sometime next year, part of the emails that a lot of us use to monitor deliverability can no longer be used to aggregate that sort of information. Now this thankfully only applies to the kind of OAuth scoped system, but still is going to have major impacts on those that are monitoring email delivery through a consumer behavior model. So we're kind of faced with a choice of going backwards and kind of deciding that seeds are kind of good enough and we only need a very basic approximation of deliverability, or figuring out how to go forward. And for those of you that are our clients already, you probably have figured it out that we decided not to go back. So what we're basically trying to do is we kind of go in and seeing, so what is it we're using today and how can we enhance that and how can we use that to build something that brings us to the next level rather than accepting any sort of defeat. Now, we still use traditional seeds to understand things like blockages, IP reputation, authentication, and similar services. We have been using virtual personas in email since 2006. These are a little bit more enhanced than seeds. They have profiles, they have genders, they buy stuff and interact with emails. We've also kind of had our largest growth and most success with consumer monitoring panels, which we still will have. We actually monitor emails in 43 ISPs currently. So our closest competitor does 4. But with these changes at Gmail, we of course will reduce somewhat the velocity of data that we have from there. But now coming in late December, and we actually have already been running this for a little bit as a test thing, is our enhanced virtual user network, which we've called Evan. And Chris is going to lead you a little bit into the truth of that.
Yeah, so we're really excited about the Evan platform. As you've noticed, Gmail makes up a lot of email lists. And so not having insight into Gmail coverage was just not an acceptable answer for us. Gmail looks at segments, so they look at how you engage with your mail. They look at what you read, what you delete, how quickly do you delete that message? Did you read it before deleting it? All of that factors into what Gmail does with your email. And so about a year and a half ago, we had come up with the idea for the Enhanced Virtual User Network. Gmail accelerated our plans quite a bit for launching this network. We started working on it on October 10th, and we are ready to announce our AI-simulated realistic consumer behavior within the inbox. So what we are doing is we have a network of AI behavior models. Currently, we're launching with about 50 different behavior profiles that have millions of data points that go into creating these behaviors. How do people read messages? How do they delete them? What sort of emails do they interact with? What sort of emails do they delete? Looking at all of our consumer panels from Yahoo, Outlook, our existing Gmail panel, the 42 other ISPs. All of that data goes into creating our model-based behaviors. Those behaviors then are used within Gmail to simulate engagement. We provide you the most detailed inbox placement as of January 19th that you're going to find at Gmail. We are launching with over 300 Evan addresses. So in a traditional seed, you'll have 15, maybe 20 seed tests at Gmail. That'll give you about a 6% margin of error. You can have a 94% inbox placement or 100%, an 88% or 94%. With 300 Evan addresses, all simulating actual user engagement, you now have a 0.3% margin of error in your tracking at Gmail. You can also do true A/B testing. You can set up engagements that say, I want to simulate a test that is going to run for 30 days, and then I want this user to stop reading my email for the next 6 months. What does Gmail do with that message? What does Yahoo do with that message? All of this can come from the virtual user network. In addition, they will have purchase behavior. So send an email, it offers to buy something. Some of our Evans are actually going to go buy those products and then simulate those segments of purchase behavior. And then finally, they have global ISP coverage. These Evans don't just live in the United States. They live in cities across the United States. They live in Tokyo, Japan, Sydney, Mumbai. They live across the world. So the easiest way to explain Evan, though, is with an actual example of how does Evan work. So this is actually an example that is live. This happened. We just got this test result back yesterday. So this Evan actually went out across the internet, automatically subscribed for my M&M's newsletter. My M&M sent a double opt-in message. That message was automatically verified by the Evan platform with the email address. They then sent the welcome email. This is where the real magic happens. The Evan used its AI modeling to determine, should I read this message? Should I delete this message? Should I interact with it, read it, and then 2 days later delete it? In this case, because it was a newsletter it had signed up for, it made the determination that it should read the message and leave it in the inbox. Our Evans are broke, though, so they did not buy anything this time because they just don't have any money currently to buy stuff. But we had hundreds of these across the world that then collectively aggregated that inbox placement at Gmail for this particular newsletter. So as of January 19th, the Evan network is going to be at Gmail supplementing our 100,000 panelists at Gmail to provide true deliverability placement at Gmail. Then you'll see it roll out to Yahoo, Outlook, and across any IMAP server that supports users via IMAP. So with that, I'm going to let GB come back up and kind of talk about who we created Evan for, why it was created, and where we believe it can go in the future. Thank you, Chris.
And yeah, so the interesting thing about this was that sometimes you get timing right. And what we basically thought about Evan was that we need to solve the problem with small senders and small segments in panel-based reporting. And even though we have millions and millions of inboxes, if you're sending to only 40,000 people in a specialist segment, it may be hard to get a statistically reliable read on what happens in a panel. So that's why we started the Evan Network and started to think about this. And it just so happens that because of that, we now have a true network that can help supersenders understand with extreme accuracy what's going on in their emails. And if you think about that from that perspective on a little bit, you know, you take one of the biggest supersender out there, Amazon, 310 million customers. They have consistently 90% above inbox placement and around 30% open rates or read rates. Now, if they would go down 1% in deliverability, and this is how important this is, that's millions of dollars of revenue lost every single year. So the accuracy is absolutely crucial, not only for the small senders, but for big senders too. So that's why we are going forward in this and allowing us through this AI simulation continue to optimize best practices. And at the same time, make sure that we enhance and we continue the record that we have in protecting privacy while you can optimize frequency and other variables in your programs and have full control over the simulations that you run. Now, I wanted to kind of end with a quote that we had from Andrew Sokop, one of our happy clients. I think we have some others in here too. Tara? So talk to Tara if you need to hear about how fantastic we are, or any one of the other clients in here. Once you've been completely convinced, talk to Mitch or Arthur, which are...
Just have to be over here.
Okay, yeah, they're together. They're not supposed to be mingling at the same table, but we'll forgive them for now. And they can lead you down the path, and you and Andrew and Tara and us together can then work together into a future which will, without a doubt, be driven by AI in terms of deliverability monitoring. And in fact, I feel so strongly about that I think that if you come next year, do not have deliverability monitoring that's AI-driven, you will actually not be having any sort of accuracy in your deliverability monitoring. With that, thank you. See you on the slopes, and come talk to us.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, man.